Okay, we are recording. Hello,
Hello there.
Dr. Lynn Carey.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
Good. That's always a bonus on this show.
Yes.
So how are
So
you?
I'm doing great. I love your poetry. I
Oh,
don't know how in the world you told the whole story, like, of what's going on today. I was blown away by that. Have you always been a poet?
I have, yeah,
Really?
since I was a
That's
little boy.
brilliant.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say now. I'm a bit. Nobody's ever.
Oh no,
Nobody's ever
I
come on
mean,
and said,
really, I can't believe you told. I'm like, you got the details of what's going on in the world today in the poetry. That's just talent.
"Thank you." Well, yeah. I mean, wasn't. Sometimes they're funny things. Poems. They just come out.
They come through. That's your
They come through. Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I get
Exactly.
that.
So yeah, I'm very. Thank you very. It was very kind of you to say so. I don't think of them as mine. I just think of them as like something I put out because I wanted to do that. I wanted to sum up things in a small, powerful way. So that's great. It's great to know. And where are you? Where are you based?
In Miami Beach,
So
Florida.
yeah, Florida. So you got the storm Delta coming your way. Is that right?
I think it's coming to, I think it's not hitting us. I could be wrong because I don't follow the news too much. I didn't see any storm signs. It might be going to Louisiana, the last I heard, which is west.
I've got a soft spot for Florida. I spent a year there in Sarasota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a bit further north from you, isn't it?
Where are you from originally?
I'm from England.
Okay. And did you say you're in Ireland now?
Yeah. Can you not tell I'm English with this amazing
I
accent?
hear the accent, yes. I love the accent, yes.
So, Lynn, you reached out to me because there was something specific you wanted to talk about.
Well, I want to connect with other truthers. I'm so inspired by like you and Charlie Ward. I'm so grateful to find you guys because when this lockdown happened, I was really upset. And it's the first time I've been upset in my life in a long time because I knew it was wrong. I knew it wasn't about a virus. It was about the New World Order. That's because I didn't know anything about Trump doing what he's doing. And I was like, how? And I already pulled myself out of the mainstream, like I found my bliss outside the mainstream narrative. So my background is I'm a chiropractor. I had my own healing journey. I had spinal surgery as a teenager, and the medical world really screwed me up. So when I entered chiropractic school, I just went because of the philosophy. Like I had 5 years where I was sick all the time and the medical world was not helping me. And it was the philosophy, it was like the one truth that pulled me in down a path. And it was just the power that made the body heals the body. And I was like, why didn't someone tell me that before?
Because they don't want you to know. That's why.
Good to know, yeah. And I just went, and the medical paradigm disproved itself to me. And really, at this point, I healed myself. It was a long journey, getting out of pain and different symptoms. But it was believing in that I could heal myself, and losing the fear is when things really started to change. And then I saw that the medical paradigm, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, all they do is look for what's wrong with you and give it a label so they can either drug it or cut it out. So I walked away from that world like 20 years ago, and I've never been healthier, raised my son differently. I had a home birth, no vaccines, no circumcision. I mean, and it wasn't even a second thought. Like, it's like once you understand how we heal,
yeah,
the medical paradigm doesn't make sense. And do you raise your children that way too?
I'm separated, but we have 5 children. The first one was an emergency cesarean, and the pressure to vaccinate was really high. He had 1 vaccine, but no more after that. Second was a VBAC. You know what a VBAC is?
Yes.
Vaginal birth after cesarean, which was, my wife was amazing because she felt raped after the first one, and then she absolutely wanted on the second one. And the pressure on her to not do it was huge.
I know, especially with the VBAC. Like, they really put the pressure on, I know.
Oh, I mean, I was in the delivery room, and there was a doctor coming in. She basically had a scalpel in her hand going, can I cut her open? And I was keeping her away. Unfortunately, the midwife was on my side that time. Then the third child was a home water birth, which was just divine, absolutely beautiful. She popped out in 20 minutes. And then the fourth birth was the first all-natural birth of twins in the UK in 30 years.
Really?
Yeah. But that was nearly screwed up by an Egyptian doctor who came in and was insisting on injecting my wife. And she was like, I don't want the injection. And he actually said so. Do you want your babies to die? Which completely stopped the contractions. But then the next day, and I had to literally keep these people out of the room because it's absolutely invasive. And that was an orgasmic birth, by the way. And that was inspired by Michel Odent. Have you heard of him?
No.
So he's a French guy, obviously, Michel Odent. And he wrote a book, I think it was called Orgasmic Birth. And one of the things I'd love to do if this, I feel very passionate about it. It's all down to my wife. She did it, but I was there with her. And it was a very interesting journey for me as a man because men don't tend to know much about it at all.
Sure.
So most men are completely useless in that scenario. And they think they're doing their best by, just doing what the doctors say. But it was very, very obvious from early on that, I'll tell you what was really interesting was when we did my wife did an interview, a chat with Janice Barcelo. Have you heard of her?
No.
That was a real eye-opener for me. This is about 10 years ago. And Janice is a woman from New York who basically tells the story about she realized that the whole birthing process was satanized. She realized that in the 50s, and she's been going on about campaigning for years and years and years.
Wow.
And when I first heard her explain that, it made total sense what she said, but it was also very shocking to me at the time. And ever since in the last 10 years, if you go through my Facebook posts over the last 10 years, you'll see I go on about Satanism all the time because it's absolutely everywhere.
That's what I've just come to realize the last few months. I never thought, I knew, even as a kid coming in, I was very depressed as a kid because I thought what I was being shown life, I didn't like it.
No.
It didn't resonate. And then, like I said, the first truth I heard was the chiropractic, and it led me to find my bliss. And I was able to create that for myself. So I never focused on, like I did, the last few years, I did get to like David Icke stuff and understanding, but I didn't focus on it because I still thought, well, I can create my own reality. And I didn't believe there was this evil force that's really ruling the world until the lockdown. And it's shocking. At first part of me is like, was I ignorant not to focus on it? But at the same time, I'm kind of glad I didn't know before this because just watching this process unfold right now, it's tough.
Oh, this is really, really tough. And it's very interesting that you mention it like that because I have some friends who are, been on their own spiritual journey, one of which is quite well known. And we've had this kind of tete-a-tete over the years because she says it's just an internal job. This is an internal job. We have to do this internally, focus on creating the universe and everything else. But I felt massively, massively drawn, like I couldn't resist because I've been studying this stuff for years, right? And
what was the first thing that led you on your path? Like, how did you?
I was 30 years ago, very briefly, 30 years ago, I was training to be a pilot in the RAF, in the Royal Air Force. And there were a few things that I saw that were contrary to what the public were being told. Like there were nuclear bases where they weren't supposed to be. And two of my friends committed suicide. One of them got covered up. And I was like, who am I working for? I couldn't, and I just lost my dad, and I was like, the way that we were taught about the enemy, the way we talked about the enemy was so dehumanizing that I just couldn't. It just didn't sit right with me at all. And I thought, there's no way that I'm going to go and drop bombs on innocent people. I'm just not going to do it. So I resigned, and then I spent the next 10 years sort of. I suppose I became quite political and I became quite left-wing, right? Previously I've been quite right-wing, so I flipped. And I thought socialism was the answer, which it isn't. My God, socialism is totally satanic. Anybody watching this doesn't realize that. Go and look it up.
I know, I hear you.
Karl Marx was writing satanic poetry in the 1800s. He was He was commissioned by the families to write Das Kapital in order so they could create China and Russia, which they did.
Wow.
And they've killed more people with communism than anything. Communism's killed more people than anything. And socialism is communism. It's just it's a step
Yes.
It's a step toward it. And that's what's going on in the States, right? You've got the Democratic Party, which
100%.
is basically a communist party.
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's been totally hijacked. It's unreal. So, but the big thing for me was that somebody gave me a copy of a thing called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion in 1999. And if you've never heard of that,
I've never heard of it.
It's heavily debunked online. People call it anti-Semitic, but they've never read it. And what it is, it's the minutes from a meeting in Russia in the 1800s, which basically lays out the plan for the next century. And within that is World War I, World War II, World War III.
It's all there.
Viruses, everything. It's all in there. And that really blew my world up. And then, I was kind of like paranoid for about a year or so. And then 9/11 happened and my friend was in the towers. And that was like, after the shock of that had subsided and it became obvious that this was a massive con because of it. I mean, look, let's talk. This is what my computer sits on when I do the podcast, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I read that.
Yeah, we've got a lot to thank David Icke for.
Yeah.
And then I started reading and just reading. And then all the satanic stuff came up about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. It just started popping up again and again and again and again and again. And I got involved.
Because it's everywhere. It keeps showing up, right?
Well, I think I've said in one of my previous videos that I was in London in February, just before the lockdowns happened, with my daughter's birthday, and in Camden in London, there were satanic symbols everywhere. Once you know what you're looking for,
yeah, you see it.
They are everywhere, and it's a cesspit. So that's why I started this channel, because I've done like 100,000 hours of study, and piece it all together.
Well, I guess the first thing, I questioned everything. I was raised Catholic, and that I had 12 years of Catholic school. There's a lot of demons there. And then my dad died when I was young, and when I was 12. And I remember thinking, okay, so I have one parent in heaven, one parent here on earth, and I'd rather go with my parent in heaven because I think we're living in hell on earth. I really felt that.
Interesting you say
I'm
that.
like, what are we doing here? This doesn't feel good at all. I mean, it was all about, I hated school. Like, I felt like I was in a prison.
Well, it is a prison.
It is a prison, right?
Yeah.
But I felt that. And I had anxiety every day. And I was a good student. Like, I did what I was told. I had A's. I worked hard. Yeah, doing all that crap. And then I had my surgery. Like, I was diagnosed with scoliosis. And it's interesting because the philosophy behind scoliosis is the curvature of the spine, right? I have an S-shaped curve. And one of the philosophies is not only are your parents maybe going in two different directions, or you're going in a different direction than what life is telling you, right? And I felt the pull. I felt the pull with my parents because one died. I wanted to go with him. And I also felt like there's got to be something else to life. Like, I seriously hated it. And then when I found the chiropractic truth, I was like, and it just started to unravel. It was like the first thread, and I kept searching and I kept going and finding more and more of outside the mainstream narrative. But I knew that the medical paradigm, I'm like, this is really messed up. But now, it's like right now, understanding the satanic stuff, I'm like, it is satanic. And I never thought that. I didn't think they were actually evil. I'm not saying there's not good people in there, but they're being trained really against healing.
Oh, well, I think that's the thing. I mean, doctors do in the UK, they do 7 years of training. And I think they do like maybe a week on food, or maybe it's less than that. And it's
they
like,
don't do anything. It's
like, what? And in Cuba, the doctors go around to people's houses and they check their diet and their exercise, and they check up on them every month, which makes much more sense to me.
Totally.
Why wouldn't we be doing that?
100%.
But, there's so much cash. It's not, but here's the big problem. Most people think it's just about money. They go, vaccines, even people who are against vaccines say, well, it's because they make so much money. It's not. They are
No.
they are stealing our souls.
I know. I mean, it wasn't until this year that I understood the level of the concept. Like, I mean, I once I got it in the lockdown, like it all came in. Like I understood what was going on. I guess I never let myself go there and dwell on it. Like I didn't think it was
Well, it's horrible.
legit.
Who wants to dwell on it? I mean, one of the things you said about this being hell, my first love killed herself when she was about 28. I think she was 28. Because we'd split up, but we were still friends. And I spoke to her on the phone about a month before she killed herself, and she said that, and she'd studied theology at university, and she was a very intelligent girl, and she was brought up in a religious cult. And God, looking back on it, God knows what happened to her, because that cult was run by a guy that had molested my dad when he was a choir boy, right?
Oh.
So it was all very, incestuous. And she said to me on the phone, she said, "This is hell." I went, "What do you mean?" She said, "No, this is hell. This is actually hell." And, things like that don't leave you. And then I was very much happy-go-lucky when I was younger. So, I didn't dwell on it too much either. Plus, at the time, because my dad had died so young, I thought I was going to drop dead any minute. So I lived every day as if it was my last, and was a bit of a hedonist. Well, I was very much a hedonist.
Yeah.
So, I did as much as I possibly could, thinking, and when I got to 37, I woke up, because that was the age he died. I woke up and go, "Oh, I'm still here. Interesting." But then you really look into it, and what's interesting about what you're saying is that you are standing up and discussing this now, because you realize this year, which is a terrific side effect of this pandemic, because how many people like you are putting the pieces together and going, "Hang on a sec," and that's why this is called the Great Awakening. Do you agree with that?
I do. It makes sense what's coming into play for me. I mean, I obviously, until it happens, we don't know, but I feel it happening. I feel like that's the truth coming out. Like I found it on my own, but I was living it privately, and I would try to share it with people who were open to it. But, even when I opened up my practice as a chiropractor, there was a lot of people who didn't want to know what I had to say. And that shocked me. Like I have family members who had chronic stuff going on, and I would say, "Let me adjust you," even for free, because you don't know what the possibilities, the body heals itself. This is amazing. They were afraid. You know what I mean? And I'm like, "What, afraid of me? I'm not going to hurt you." And then there was people who would say, I would say, "Oh, don't get that surgery. Let me work on you, because, oh no, it's just easier. I need to get rid of this." And I was like, "Oh my God, they don't want to know."
Well, they're under
So
a
I had
spell.
to sit with that for like 5 years, like that really. So to see what's happening right now, like with people masked up and believing in the virus, like 6 months later still.
I know,
didn't believe
it's unbelievable,
I mean, my mind goes, I don't even know what to think.
It's literally a magic spell.
It is.
And this is the conclusion I've come to. Magic is a real thing. They use magic.
I agree with you.
They use numerology. They use astrology. They use all of these things they've hidden from us. They use magnetism. They use things that they hide from us, and they put us under a spell. Some of us don't fall for the spell, but the majority do. And the funny thing about the spell is it's very subtle. There was a guy the other day who had a mask on talking to me, and he said, "Why aren't you wearing a mask?" And I said, "Because this is bollocks. It's patently bollocks." And then he actually said, "Yeah, I think you're right." And I said, "Well, why are you still wearing a mask then?" He said, "Because they'll shut my shop down." And I said, "Yeah, well, just open it again." And people just don't. They've just abrogated all responsibility from their own lives, right, to the government. They are suckling on the nipple of the state, and that's what government does. It makes you reliant upon it right from birth. So you just trust it, and it's just patently got to change. It's got to go.
The next thing that happened to me when I opened my practice, I figured out the health side, like healing. Like I really kind of got to a gray state where healing was mundane. Like I didn't need to heal myself. I was healed. It's like, you're okay. You don't have to figure it out anymore. But what I realized is that nobody taught me about money or business, especially running a practice. So
Nope.
that brought me down another rabbit hole. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. Kiyosaki.
And I did hit, but it was limited. I mean, but the whole thing of creating financial freedom and understanding the rat race. And I understood that. And I also understood is that's what was making people sick.
Yeah.
That rat race. And I wanted to remedy that. So I went down that path and I got caught I had investment properties and I got caught in the 2008 crash.
Me too.
But I knew they never fixed it. You know what I mean? Like I knew it was off and it was hard. It's hard finding the truth. Like I'm grateful that I was in like this little cocoon of chiropractic for healing. It made it easier because everything was kind of right there for me. But trying to figure out the money and the wealth cycles, and so it wasn't until the last few years that I discovered kind of anarcho-capitalism, and I started really studying like
Jeff Berwick.
Ron Paul. With who?
Jeff Berwick.
Yes, Jeff Berwick. I follow him.
Anarchapulco.
And the Dollar Vigilante, and he had Acapulco, and
I've been trying to go to that for 5 years. Hopefully I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and I was following Ron Paul.
Yeah.
And it made sense. And I think I am an anarchist because we should self-govern, and it's the least amount of government possible. So when this lockdown happened, what upset me was they had no answers. Because I was listening to all those guys. They had no answers of what was happening. And I'm like, well, even if I was to leave the United States because it's on the verge of collapse, which I saw that. I understood the economic cycle that the Fed's done. And I understood if Trump was supposed to do the right thing, he'd be getting rid of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. But I didn't see any signs of that. And those guys, and I'm like, okay, now we're locked down. If they want to vaccine chip us, how are we going to travel? And it's all over the world. Like there's nowhere to go. So I kind of got to the end of my road with them, and I was getting very discouraged. And then I guess thank God, somebody sent me, I guess, Out of Shadows, and then The Fall of the Cabal.
Yeah.
And then I found Charlie Ward, and he kind of, because I was like, oh my God, thank God Trump is good, because I'm like, they've all been bought for how many years? You can't trust any of them in the government. So, and I just feel very hopeful with the movement behind him. And I feel like it is coming into play. I feel like it's happening.
Oh, it is. I mean, I'm getting, my truth detector just went off as you spoke. So,
I got it too. I got the chills when I said it.
I'm running everything on that now.
Yeah, totally. And I always follow that. I look for that inspiration. That's where I feel like that's God talking to me. Like, that's it. It's that happiness vibe, right? That the chill vibe, or, that's.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest issue with Trump is that it's very difficult. I'm in a number of WhatsApp groups, and every day it's like, oh, I'm losing faith. I'm not seeing it happening enough. And it's always like that.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to understand that he has had to operate on one front for the mass population, on another front for the media, on another front for his enemies, right? And another front for those of us who know what he's talking about.
Right.
And he is playing games with all of them, because you don't let your enemy know what you're going to do. And it's all about lining everything up, and all about timing. And if you actually, the people that call Q a right-wing conspiracy cult, I just find that hilarious, because it's the only cult on earth that tells you to think for yourself. And
right, exactly.
And there's nothing right-wing about Q, and there's nothing right-wing about Trump either, because he's done more for the economy, for the Black community, Hispanic community, for world peace. He's the only president that's not invaded anywhere, and we've not had an American invasion of a country for 4 years. That's incredible.
I mean, to think what he has done and what he has put up with, he is amazing.
Oh, he's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm a very cautious person when it comes to saying, oh, wow. But wow.
Me too.
Wow. And every day that goes by, it's just amazing that we've got this guy there. But not just him, the team that was behind
the whole team.
They must be incredible.
It's unbelievable.
And it's not just political or financial. This is spiritual. This is a 100% deeply spiritual thing.
I've never been a political person. And the reason is because it's never made sense to me. I would try to watch certain things. I got rid of the news a long time ago because I could just feel the negativity. I didn't realize they were deliberately programming us to think a certain way. I just felt like, oh, it's so negative. How do you watch that? And then I couldn't follow politics because they just went around and around and around and they never solved anything. I thought that was weird.
Yeah.
So I never identified with one political party. I thought that's odd. I think it's really odd that people really identify with one political party. Now, this is how ignorant I am. It wasn't until this year I found, once I understood what Trump was doing, and I saw that he was with the Republican side, because I have voted both ways. You know, it was kind of about the person. And I would hear, I was having a friend discuss what he kept calling the other group liberals. And I go, who are the liberal? Who's liberal? He's like, the Democrats. I'm like, they're communists. Why are they called liberals?
Because they hijacked that term. Because
right.
20 years ago, a liberal was something completely different to now.
Right.
They hijacked the term, and they did the switcheroo. I mean, it's all about confusion, you know.
Yes.
And I personally think he stood for the Republicans because it was the least infected party.
I agree with you.
And he had to pick one of them. I mean, you know,
right.
when JFK was a Democrat, I think the Democrat Party was a bit different to what it is now.
I agree.
So
I agree. The corruption really fell into that pot right now.
You know, you've got Biden, 47 years he's been in office. Right. 47 years? What? The guy is an idiot.
I know.
It's unbelievable that anybody's even contemplating voting for him.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. So, you know, I'm from Delaware, where he's from. Like he lives probably 10 minutes from where I grew up. And so he's been around my whole life. You know, he hasn't done anything. And I moved to Miami Beach just because I followed my heart. Like I needed to get
sunshine.
out of, I needed sunshine. I needed tropical weather. I needed to expand myself. And the first 3 years, you know, here I was pretty happy. Like I loved it. I felt like I came home. I was meeting people. I was networking. There was events. It was a whole different way of life. And I felt my soul come to life. But then when the lockdown happened, and I'm realizing everybody here is a liberal. Everybody's a liberal. Everybody's masked up. People that I thought had sense are screaming, put your mask on social media. And people came after me. And I'm like, I have 25 years in the healing profession and you're yelling at me that I'm harming somebody else? I'm like, I've dedicated my life to trying to liberate you people to understand your own healing power, you know? I really had good intentions. And do you feel like where you're living, would I feel this way anywhere? Or is it, because I wonder, am I still going to be able to live here when this is all over? Because I don't know if I can associate with those people anymore. And I'm wondering, would I feel that everywhere? Is everybody feeling that right now? Or?
Yeah, it's everywhere as far as I can tell. And I was just thinking then when you were talking that this brainwashing has been going on a very long time. If you look at old George Carlin comedy clips from the 80s, he talks about when did germs become a bad thing? You know, he was saying that in the 80s, right? And this was around the same time PC came in, political correctness. When I first came to the States, I think it was 87. And I was telling my son the other day, that's when PC was new. It was like, you know, and I explained to him that basically it's fascism, it's mental fascism. And so this has been going on a long time. And what they've been doing over a very long time is de-educating us. Dumbing us down. There's a great book, I don't know if you've ever read it, called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. You can get it for free online.
I would like to read that.
And it was written by one of Reagan's education ministers from the 80s. An amazing woman, I can't remember her name, but anybody should go and read that, it's brilliant. And, you know, there's a couple of fundamental things going on. Firstly, you can't catch a virus.
Right.
Viruses are created inside your body as a result of toxification, right? So you can't actually transmit a virus. That's the first thing. Nobody seems to know this, right?
I know.
Secondly, if you have a virus, an alkaline environment will destroy it. You know, I'm making homemade quinine, having that every morning out of grapefruit skins and lemon skins, unwaxed, organic, cooked, slow cooked in water. Drink that liquid. It's like super juice, right? Everybody's zinc and magnesium deficient. Everybody's buying packaged foods. They are just fluoride in the water, heavy metals, chemtrailing. In many ways, it's not the fault of those people. And what I'm really hoping for is that there's going to be a huge transformation. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's you know, 21st of December comes up a lot. 21st and 2nd of December.
For that too, yes.
this, if you look at this human resonance and the white light sections of that graph, you'll see that that's the 5D kind of new DNA activation information. My ears are ringing off the charts. I know some people that are watching this will say that's because of all the EMF interference and stuff like that, and I agree with that. But there's also this other really strange ringing in the ear that comes when, and that is a DNA upgrade, and and these things are all true. And I'm just hoping that literally the human race wakes up one day and everybody's like blinking in the light, going, "Oh, this is not what I thought it was." And I think people like you and me and other people will be here to help them, because they're going to need help. And I think specifically with doctors, they're going to go through unbelievable trauma, because if they wake up and realize what they've been doing to the human race and the nurses, it's going to be a nightmare for them.
Totally.
And I really feel sad for them, because there's going to be a massive high suicide rate when they realize what they've done.
I can totally see that.
They have been killing people without realizing it.
I know.
And it's really sad for them. I feel very sorry for them. But, you know, I'm working with I got to know a guy, I interviewed a guy who calls himself Dr. Q, who is like an American MD, who 30 years an MD, finally read the ingredients of a vaccine. And once he realized what was in it, he said, I can't do this anymore. So he's no longer an MD, and he's written a book. I'll put a link to it in the description. I was at a rally in Dublin last week. 2 doctors got up, both GPs, general practitioners, right? So, or MD, what you might call them. Both of them said the same thing. Well, one of them they were both amazing, but one of them specifically said he just saw through the lies, and he started treating people with hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and he told them, he said, look, this is not recommended by the HSE, the health authority, but all the patients trusted him, so they took it, and he cured them all. And he stood up and he said this. 2 days later, he gets removed from the medical board in the town that he works in. I mean, hello? It's
disturbing.
So...
Do you remember the frontline doctors that came out in America?
Yeah.
I saw that. And, you know, for me, even I just take care of myself. I don't believe in disease names, so that doesn't scare me when they create a new disease name.
Me neither.
My mind doesn't think like that anymore. I wasn't looking for a cure. I wasn't afraid I was going to catch anything. But when I saw what they were saying, I'm like, this is a simple solution for all the people living in fear. And I posted it, and I'm like, if this isn't doesn't show no new world order, especially, you know, like, this is a simple solution. This is the answer. I thought we were going to have the awakening at that moment. I really did. Like, I thought people are going to see this. I got slammed on my Facebook. People coming after me that I thought were friends, coming after me about that. And I was horrified. I'm like, they're in such a coma. I don't think they're ever going to wake up.
Well, you might be right. I think it's possible.
I know, that was crazy.
It's possible that some of them are going to get left behind, you know?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, I don't know how anybody with a brain can be falling for any of this shit at all.
I know, Mark. I feel that way too. It's just mind-boggling.
So, you know, I'm just taking each day, one day at a time. And I've found, I wouldn't say I've certainly got a stronger connection to my higher self. It's very, very powerful. And I'm trusting that. And I'm getting upgraded, and I'm getting told to go in certain directions that don't, you know, and I've also had to lose some people on the way. And it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. And it's like, I might have upset a few people as well, but I'm going to a better place, basically. And my view is that either we keep going the way that we're supposed to spiritually, and it's going to make sense, or the bad guys are going to win, and then we're all dead anyway. So why not?
That's right.
Because that's it. It's either one or the other.
You know, I had the thought, we can evolve and come to this beautiful utopian place. Like, I really believe we can create heaven on earth. And I feel like I was kind of just doing it in my own personal life. I was happy.
That's how we do it.
Yeah. And so if we can do this on a global scale, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? You know, I had those thoughts too.
Well, I mean, I've heard that they've taken a lot of the really bad guys out already. I've got no way of proving it, but it resonates with me.
I agree. It resonates with me too.
And I've heard that they understand this on a spiritual level, and one of the biggest issues they've got is making sure that this energy just has to be taken off world as well. You know, so disposing of them, because we're multidimensional beings, right? So there's the human remains and everything else, but then there's all this other stuff and all these entities, and there's so many entities, right? And literal demons.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Literal demons under the ground, you know. So yeah, don't know. I think I'm optimistic though. I've always felt optimistic. I mean, a couple of years ago, I felt suicidal, and I was given a choice, and something got me out of bed that day. I don't know what it was, but and then some amazing people popped up, helped me along, and then I started seeing all these healers and mediums and stuff, and I kept getting told stuff like, "You've got a job to do." One of them asked me if I wanted to be an exorcist, one of the spirits, which I thought was quite interesting, because some of the work I'm actually now doing is effectively exorcism, which is interesting.
Very nice.
Right?
Very interesting.
You know, my life's going in a completely different direction, and I'm like, okay, I've just got to keep going with it. And I think that's what we've all got to do, is just, you have to get rid of the fear first, though. I think that's the one that.
Yes.
And the problem with fear is that most people don't realize they're under the influence of fear because they've been under it their whole lives. So
it's the normal.
It's
because
like
it's so normal.
Yeah, it's like you don't realize how good your feet are going to feel with tight shoes on until you take them off.
Right.
You know? So yeah, you know, that's, is there anybody nearby that feels the same as you, or are you just surrounded by a sea of masks?
No, I have a couple of friends that feel like I do.
That's good.
The rest of it, a lot of it, it's a sea of masks, and it's been a little brutal. I've been really battling the masks lately because I don't know, I feel like I'm also vibrating like this. I don't feel like dealing with this anymore. And I'm like, here comes another one attacking me because I don't have a mask on. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm trying to align myself, but I'm just getting beat up. You know, it's like wearing me out.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I almost shut down completely, right? And I don't know what was going on, but everything changed, and I was sleeping all day. I couldn't get my thoughts straight, and I don't feel like that at the moment. I feel better, but this is tough because we are in this spiritual war. So it's not just what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. We're actually up there fighting, right? And it's tiring because we're taking out the biggest evil the world has ever known.
Ever.
And, you know, I'm looking forward to winning because I think we're going to win.
You know, I had a thought when you were saying you felt suicidal, because I felt that all growing up. I just wanted out. And I think it has such a negative connotation, right? When we say that, like suicidal. But I think they're the healthiest people. Like, we're the healthiest people, because I think there's a point where it's that suicidal thoughts is make sure you're questioning the narrative. That's the chance to wake up, right? And I think so is when you're diagnosed with a disease. I tell people, I'm like, it's not that you did something wrong, it's your chance to break through, right? Like, this is your chance to get back your power. It could be the greatest journey of your life if you take it.
Well, that's true. And what I found amazing about doing this channel is the amount of people that I've met who are truth-seeking or vibrating at a high frequency and understand what's going on. And they've all got one thing in common, and that is that they've been through a nightmare in their life of some kind, whether it's suicidal or a big traffic accident or, you know, massive trauma. You know, and I think that's... Those things can be gifts as well, and the reason why I'm still hanging around, I've got 5 kids. That's the main reason. But the other reason is that I don't fear death. I don't give a shit what they do to me, because I will transcend that anyway. And this is too interesting not to watch play out, right?
It really is, because
what I can see coming is so beautiful.
Yes.
I want to be there, you know. I want to see my kids in that world, because the world that the world that we're supposed to live in is totally abundant. It's full of love. Everybody's chilled out. We don't need to be stressed. We don't need to be going to work. We don't need to, money is bullshit, you know? We don't need to be stealing. There doesn't need to be anybody hungry. All of this is created by these satanic motherfuckers, right?
Yes.
And they are going down. They are going down.
I agree with you. And I think we're coming into a beautiful world too. And you know, so when I didn't understand that Trump had a plan and that we were coming out of this, like just in those first 2 weeks of lockdown, I was so upset. I always thought that I would write a book to share my healing story, just because I wanted to inspire people. And especially when I was in day-to-day as a chiropractor, I had my practice for 18 years. I felt like I had to share the same story of giving people hope that, yeah, you can heal yourself. That was the message. You be your own best doctor. I didn't even like to be called Dr. Lynn, because I'm no different than you. You know, we have to all be our own best doctors. So I thought, I'm going to put it on paper. So I just typed it up. 2 weeks, it just kind of, like you said, it came through. It just came through. And I wrote my little book, My Journey to Grace. And I thought, and it was before I understood even about the plan to change the world. It's really just basic, like, and I put all my references in, things that I use that help change my life, from health to money, and I put it all in there. And I thought, this is just a little manual that people can help, like a little roadmap, so they can find their own truth.
That's great.
You know? And I think we're going to need more of that stuff, because when the old stuff falls away, we need a new way of being, to learn to be again, you know?
Yeah. So where do we get the book?
It's on Amazon and it's on barnesandnoble.com. And it's on my link on my YouTube page. I have a link there.
Yeah, send me the links. I'll put them in the description.
Okay.
And that's great, because that's how we change the world. That's why I'm writing poetry. I mean, I think I was looking at the other day. One of my poems. Well, my poems have had like nearly 100,000 views in a month, right?
They're powerful, Mark.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not. I didn't write them to become well known as a poet or anything. It's what's amazing is that even if you write and publish a best-selling poetry book, you won't sell more than 3,000 copies in a year. And I'm like, wow, 100,000 across different channels, about 100,000 views.
Interesting.
Wow. And that's what we've got to do. All of us have got to go tell our stories, which is why we're chatting now. Because walk into the shop without a mask, with the protection, put on the armor of God, right? Because that is really powerful, actually. It
is.
And you will find that you're giving other people courage. And it's a bit like a petri dish, you know. You will probably have done this in biology at some point, but you know, if you've got a load of bacteria and you introduce a new bacteria, it's like 1, 2, 2, 4, 4, 8, boom, and then suddenly it all changes. Yeah. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
I hope so too. It's kind of like, did you ever hear David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force?
I've heard of it. I've not read it.
It's something about the 100th monkey syndrome, where the first 2 monkeys may do something different than the pack and it looks weird, but it's when it reaches 100 monkeys that it changes how the whole group does everything. I mean, that's what happens with us humans too, right?
Well, there's a great a funny story about that. I think it was in New Zealand where, you know those grids to stop sheep leaving fields, like for cars to go over, but the sheep can't go over.
Oh, okay.
They'll lose their legs down the grid. So it's like a grid.
I didn't know that.
So apparently this sheep in New Zealand worked out that if you just rolled, it could get out of the field, right? And as soon as that one sheep did it, sheep in Wales started doing it like the next week.
No.
Well, there's a quantum universe, right?
Isn't that amazing though?
Well, that's how it works.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's cool.
I know. It's brilliant.
That's why we're just like, I feel like we're just scratching the surface of what's to come. Like so much cool stuff is coming.
You're in Florida and we're talking about this stuff. I've got people in Australia, people all over the world. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. And we are waking up.
And that's why I love our little truther community that's growing and growing. And I can't believe worldwide, I think that's what really was eye-opening to me, to see people all over, even rooting for Trump, that you're not even in our country, that you can vote. And there's so many, how it affects the whole world.
Trump is the president of the world right now. And, you know,
it's amazing.
I want him to come into the UK and Ireland and get rid of all these corrupt, evil, Luciferian, satanic scumbags that
Yeah.
are destroying these countries, absolutely destroying them.
Where they've been destroying, it's like this dark cancer that's been destroying our world, and it's getting just pulled right out right now. I love it.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, I've got some friends. There's some friends of mine that are still locked into that thing, that think that I've got religion or something, and I'm like, oh, this couldn't be further from the truth. But
Yeah.
God, I hope they
It's
wake
the
up.
labels again, right? I feel like people get hung up in the labels. Like I'm Republican or Democrat. I have this disease. This religion. I'm like, get rid of the labels. We're all one. It's
That's
all one
how.
love vibe.
That's how they do it. That's how they create the division.
But that's how they divide us and control us with
You
that.
can't be divided unless you are labeled.
That's right.
So
very true.
It's true, isn't it?
That's true.
You know.
That's a big truth bomb there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's lovely to chat to you, and I want to get your book as well. That sounds great. It's wonderful to see somebody doing such a positive story after such a tough beginning in life, right? Emotionally.
Yeah, it's a story of hope.
Well, it's also the hero's journey. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Everybody should read The Hero's Journey. I read it about 30 years ago. It changed my life. And you realize that we're in a giant hero's journey right now. And your own life is a hero's journey. Even your cells go on a hero's journey. So it's fascinating. So you're on a hero's journey, and you produced this book, and I'm really glad you reached out to have a chat, Lynn.
I loved it. This was awesome. Let's stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a beautiful day. I'm going to stop the recording. I'll still be on the line, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you very much, Lynn.